Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through all sorts of sources, articles, interviews, you name it, to really get to the heart of things so you feel properly informed.
Yeah, we pull out those surprising bits.
Exactly. And today we're digging into something maybe you haven't thought much about, how the audiobooks you listen to actually pay the people who create them.
Right. Most people just, click buy or use a credit.
And assume the author gets a decent cut, yeah. But turns out it's way more complicated than that. And for a lot of authors, it's become, pretty controversial lately.
It really has. It's a complex system. And that's what this deep dive is all about, unpacking Audible's royalty model, especially the newer changes, and seeing how it's affecting authors, the whole publishing scene, really.
Okay.
We've got some really interesting sources lined up. There are video transcripts from Daniel Greene's channel featuring some deep interviews with author advocate Sullivan.
Ah, okay. I've seen some of her work.
Yeah, she's been very vocal. Plus, we've got updates from Sanderson, the best-selling author.
Right, his stance made wave.
Definitely. And there's also a change.org petition that really lays out the main worries people have.
So our mission today is basically to get our heads around this system, figure out where all the concerns are actually coming from, understand what people are doing to maybe push for changes.
And help you understand the real impact behind clicking play or using that credit. Your choices matter.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Audible's position in the market, huge, right?
Oh, it's massive. They control something like 65% of audiobook purchases just in the U.S.
65%, wow.
And that's just audio. If you look at Amazon overall, their parent company, they handle somewhere between 50 and 80% of all book distribution from the big pub.
50 to 80.
Yeah, and even more when you look at self-published book. They really dominate that space.
So that's a lot of power concentrated in one place.
Exactly. And that's the core issue, really. One company having such enormous influence over how authors get paid.
And the worry is that this new Audible Plus model is actually harming authors.
That's the perception, that it benefits Audible, maybe some listeners in the short term, but at the expense of creators, particularly how they're paid.
Okay, so if that's the backdrop, let's talk about the actual change. What did the old system look like? Remind us of that first.
All right. The old way was pretty straightforward. An author puts their book on Audible, they set a price, or Audible helps set one.
Mm-hmm.
Someone buys it, maybe with cash, maybe with a credit. The author gets paid a royalty based on the agreed rate. Simple enough. And crucially, you bought the book. You own that file, theoretically, forever.
Okay, clear. But now it's changing. You mentioned a transition.
Yeah, it's a slow shift. As authors' existing contracts run out, Audible offers them a choice. They can stick with the old purchase-to-own model.
Okay.
Or, if Audible approves them, they can join what's called the Plus catalog.
Right, the Plus catalog, that's the streaming part.
Exactly. It works much more like, say, Netflix or Spotify. You pay a monthly fee, and you get access to listen to anything in that specific catalog.
But you don't own those.
Nope. Access, not ownership. Stop paying the subscription, you lose access.
And Audible has different tiers for listeners now.
Correct. There's the basic Plus plan. That's about, $7.95 a month. Gives you all you can listen access, but only from that curated Plus catalog selection.
Okay, just the Plus stuff.
Then there's Premium Plus. That's more like $14.95 a month. With that, you get 1 credit per month to buy any audiobook on the entire platform. Keep it forever, like the old days.
Ah, so that's the ownership part.
Right. And you also get access to the entire Plus streaming catalog on top of that.
I see. So Premium Plus gets you both.
Kind of, yeah. And the person reportedly behind orchestrating this whole new system is Lee Jarrett. He's the head of ACX.
ACX, that's the platform authors use to get their books onto Audible.
Yeah, Audible Creation Exchange. He handles that and third-party relationships. Apparently, he's referred to himself as the architect of this new model and said he's very proud of it.
The architect. Okay, so where does the big controversy kick in? You mentioned robbing Peter to pay Paul.
All right, this is the absolute core of it. It seems to stem from Jarrett's view, or perhaps Audible's corporate view, of how listeners behave, especially those Premium Plus members.
The ones with the credit and the streaming access.
Exactly. The assumption seems to be that if you use your credit to buy a specific book, but you also listen to some free stuff from the Plus catalog in the same month, then the money, the value assigned to that credit you used, shouldn't necessarily all go to the author of the book you bought.
Wait, what? Why not?
Because in their view, your listening activity was split. So some of the value from your purchase credit should be, diverted, siphoned off to pay for the Plus catalog stuff you streamed.
So let me get this straight. I used my $14.95 credit specifically to buy, say, an indie author's new book because I want to support them.
Right.
But then I also listened to, a classic that's in the Plus catalog.
Yep.
The indie author I bought actually gets less money because I also listened to something else.
That's precisely the mechanism authors are upset about. The income from the purchased title's author gets redirected to cover the streaming. It creates this zero-sum game.
Meaning one author's gain is directly another author's loss from the same pot of money.
Exactly. The pot is essentially the listener's monthly fee or credit value, and it gets divided based on listening habits, not just purchase.
Wow. And how much do you even have to listen to for those Plus titles to count?
That's another point. For a Plus title to qualify for a share of that payment pool, you only need to listen to a certain percent. And for the longest books, the maximum listen time required is just 30 minutes.
30 minutes on potentially a 15-hour book.
Yep, listen for half an hour, and that Plus book potentially takes a slice of the pie, maybe even from the author whose book you intentionally bought with your credit.
That seems disproportionate.
It gets even stranger when you look at the member values Audible apparently uses internally. They might value using a credit to buy a book at, say, $13.
Okay.
But they might value consuming a single Plus catalog title at only $7.
Right. So buying is worth more.
You'd think.
Yeah.
But under this new system, because of the potential for splitting the value, the author whose book was purchased for $13 could actually end up receiving less than the $7 value assigned to a streamed book if the listener streamed multiple Plus titles.
That feels completely back. You're paying specifically for one thing, but the money goes elsewhere.
Precisely. And Robin Sullivan, the author advocate, made a really important point.
What was it?
She pointed out that even if an author deliberately opts out of having their books in the Plus catalog.
So they only want their books sold via credits or cash.
Right. They can still be negatively affected. If a listener buys their book with a credit, but also listens to Plus titles that month,
their payment gets reduced anyway.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
So they end up feeling, as Sullivan put it, complicit in this system they don't even want to be part of. Their sales value is still being siphoned off.
That leads to a pretty uncomfortable question, doesn't it? If money is being siphoned away from purchased book, where does it all go? Especially if Audible puts its own production Plus catalog.
That is the million-dollar question, or perhaps the multi-million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one where transparency is severely lacking.
Like public domain books that Audible produces.
Exactly. Think about something like, say, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Public domain text, but Audible hires narrators, produces an audio. They own that recording.
Okay.
Now, if they put that recording in the Plus catalog and a Premium Plus member listens to it after using their credit on Author X's book.
Is Audible effectively paying itself with money siphoned from Author X?
That's the fear. Is Audible taking a royalty cut or perhaps the full $7 consumption value from the pool funded by another author's sale? They've never clearly answered this publicly. It raises a huge potential conflict of interest.
It really sounds like the communication around all this has been, well, bit of a mess. I heard someone describe it as blisteringly incompetent.
That's a direct quote from, I believe, Robin Sullivan in one of the interviews. And it reflects the frustration many authors feel. It's been incredibly hard to get straight answers.
So Audible hasn't really offered a clear rationale for why it has to be this complicated or why the money way.
Not in a way that satisfies the authors asking the questions. Their official explanations tend to be quite vague.
Like what?
Like saying, Audible takes a member's plan value and divides that value among the titles the member listened to over the course of the month.
Which sounds simple, but doesn't explain the siphoning effect at all, does it?
Not really. It doesn't address the core concern. Why is purchase value being diluted by streaming activity?
Yeah.
How is that split actually calculated?
Trying to track that as an author must be a nightmare.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to reconcile your payment. Robin Sullivan used an analogy of a complex buy one, get one free sale where some items are, plus some aren't, and trying to figure out your share. It's incredibly opaque.
And those key questions, like how Audible's own productions are treated in the Plus catalog payments.
Pretty much silence in public statements, yeah. Which only fuels the suspicion and frustration.
Okay, so faced with this lack of clarity and what they saw as an unfair system, authors started pushing back. Tell us about Robin Sullivan's efforts. She didn't just write blog posts, right?
No, she went further. She managed to get a direct sit-down meeting with top Audible executive. Lee Jarrett was there, Kristen Lang, another key figure.
And how did that go? Did they listen?
According to Sullivan, not really. She laid out the concerns, the robbing Peter to pay Paul mechanism, the lack of transparency, and she said they eventually doubled down on their position. They defended this.
Doubled down, so no real progress there. What's her proposed fix then?
Her solution is actually quite simple, elegant even. She calls it a tweak.
Okay.
She suggests keeping the money pools completely separate. You have the premium pool money from credits and cash purchases. That money only goes to the authors whose books were actually purchased.
Makes sense. One pool for buying.
Then you have the Plus pool money from the $7.95 Plus subscriptions, and maybe a portion of the Premium Plus fee allocated to streaming. That money only pays for content streamed from the Plus catalog.
So the two streams don't cross. Buying pays for buying. Streaming pays for streaming.
Exactly. It ensures a listener's credit purchase goes entirely to the author they intend to support, and the Plus catalog is funded by the subscriptions meant for it. No siphon.
Seems logical. And she started a petition for them.
Yes, on change.org. The goal is to gather support from authors and listeners to show Audible there's widespread agreement that these payment pools need to be separate.
Okay, so that's one major push. But then there was Brandon Sanderson. He's a huge name. What did he do?
Yeah, Sanderson's move was significant. He had these 4 secret projects, highly anticipated books he funded through Kickstarter.
Right, that record breaker.
Yeah, and initially he announced he would not be releasing them on Audible.
Wow. That's a big deal for Audible, losing those likely bestsellers.
Yeah.
Why did he do it?
He explicitly said it was to bolster healthy competition. He felt Audible's practices were stifling the market.
And what were his specific complaints beyond the payment stuff we've discussed?
His issues were broader, though related. One was the opacity of reporting authors getting confusing spreadsheets, not really knowing how their earnings were calculated.
The same transparency issue?
Exactly. Another was the lack of clarity on how credit values were distributed, that same siphoning concern. But a huge one for him was the royalty rate itself.
Ah, the percentage authors get.
Right. Typically, Audible was offering authors 40% royalties if they were exclusive to Audible, meaning they couldn't sell their audiobook anywhere.
40% for exclusivity. What if they weren't?
Then it dropped to just 25%.
25%. That seems low for digital.
It is, especially compared to other digital platforms. Think about Steam for games, or even Amazon's own Kindle Direct Publishing for ebook. The standard there is often closer to 70%.
70 versus 25 or 40. That's a massive.
Huge. Sanderson argued that these low rates, combined with the exclusivity requirement for the better rate, were anti-competitive and unfair to creators.
So he withheld his books. Did he look for other options?
He did. He publicly explored working with competitors. Spotify was mentioned as they're trying to get into audiobooks, and another company, Speechify.
Speechify, what did they offer?
Speechify made a really interesting move. They publicly offered a 70% royalty rate, not just to Sanderson, but to any author who listed their books directly with them.
70% across the board. That's a direct challenge to Audible's model.
Absolutely. It put real pressure on Audible, and it worked to an extent.
What happened? Did Audible cave?
High-level Audible executives actually flew out to meet with Sanderson personally.
Wow. Okay. They took that serious.
They had to. Losing Sanderson's books would have been a blow. The result was Audible agreeing to a new royalty structure, at least for him initially, but it seems to be rolling out more broadly now, possibly.
What did they agree to?
Several things. Improved minimum royalty rates, reportedly up to 50% for exclusive authors and 30% for non-exclusive. Still not 70%, but better than 40-25.
Okay. An improvement.
Also, monthly royalty payments instead of quarterly, which helps authors with cash flow, and promises of more transparent reporting, clearer spreadsheets.
So some concessions were made. Did Sanderson see it as a win?
Partially. He acknowledged the progress, but he still pointed out that the rates are below that 70% standard. And he particularly dislikes that Audible still ties its best rates to exclusivity.
Because that discourages authors from using competing platforms.
Exactly. He sees it as Audible using its market power to maintain dominance and limit competition, even with a slightly improved rate. So not a total victory in his eyes.
Okay, so we have this complex payment system, the pushback, some changes. What are the wider effects of all this? Maybe for listeners who aren't deep in the public.
Well, one subtle effect is what some call the guilt factor.
Guilt factor, how so?
If you understand this system as a listener, you might start feeling, well, a bit guilty. If you're a Premium Plus member, every time you listen to a free book from the Plus catalog.
Even something popular like Lord of the Rings, if it's in there.
Right. You might realize, am I accidentally taking money away from that indie author whose book I bought with my credit this?
Because your listening triggers the siphon.
Potentially, yes. It forces listeners who genuinely want to support authors into this awkward position where their listening habits might inadvertently harm the creators they like.
That's quite manipulative if you think about it. Using listener goodwill against authors.
It highlights how platform design isn't neutral. It can really shape behavior and outcome, sometimes in ways users don't expect.
And this might actually change how informed listeners use Audible.
It could. You might decide, okay, this month I bought a book with my credit, so I'm not going to touch the Plus catalog. Or maybe you only use credits and never stream the free stuff. It adds a layer of complexity and calculation to just enjoying a book.
And you mentioned this connects to Amazon's broader strategy.
Yeah, it feels like part of a pattern. Look at Kindle Unlimited for ebook. Amazon heavily incentivizes authors to be exclusive to KU.
Right. Better visibility, higher page read payouts.
Exactly. Which pulls authors and readers deeper into the Amazon ecosystem, making it harder for competitors and making ownership less common than access through subscription. It's a self-feeding cycle.
So this Audible situation isn't isolated. It's part of this bigger shift toward rent content.
I think that's a fair way to frame it. We're seeing it everywhere. Music, movies, software, and now increasingly with book. These big tech companies seem to be moving us away from owning digital files towards paying for access through subscription.
You might not really own own your library in the future.
Not in the traditional sense, no. Your access depends on your continued subscription payments to the platform.
There's also the optics of there, creating winners.
Yeah, the perception is that Audible is creating an in-group. The authors approved for the Plus catalog, who benefit from the streaming pool, potentially at the expense of an out-group, those who are only available for purchase or aren't approved for Plus. That doesn't look great publicly.
It sounds divisive.
It can be perceived that way. And underlying all of this is just the sheer complexity.
I keep coming back.
Because it seems needlessly complicated, as critics say. It makes it incredibly difficult for the average reader, or even many author, to really grasp the financial implications of how they listen or where they publish. Transparency is just not there.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. We've covered a lot ground here.
We have. It boils down to this core tension. Audible's massive market power clashing with author concern over a new, very complex royalty system.
A system that redistributes income in ways many find opaque and unfair.
Right. Even though there have been some recent concessions, largely thanks to advocacy from people like Sullivan and the stand taken by Sanderson.
But the fundamental structure, the potential for siphoning, the push towards exclusivity and renting over owning, that seems to remain.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's why understanding this matters for you, the listener.
Your choice is heaven.
If supporting authors directly is important to you, knowing how these platforms work is the first step. And maybe exploring alternatives.
Like what?
Well, there's Libro.fm, which is structured to share profits with independent bookstores.
Oh, right. I've heard of them.
Or even just using your library card with apps like Libby or Hoopla. Borrowing audiobooks is free for you and still provides some compensation to authors and publishers through library purchase.
Good point. So it's about being aware of the ecosystem.
Exact. Awareness is key.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it? What does all this signal for the future?
Yeah, it's a big question. If these huge platforms increasingly control not just how creative work is distributed, but also the models for how creators get paid,
does that change the incentive structure? Will independent creators still be motivated or even able to produce new work if the compensation feels unfair or
It's a real concern. And beyond that, what does ownership truly mean for you, the consumer, in a world that's rapidly shifting towards subscriptions for everything?
Yeah.
Access over possession seems to be the direct.
But what are we losing in that shift? Something to think about next time you browse for an audiobook.